Why don't shelter-in-place orders apply to luxury apartment construction projects? March 23rd, 2020. So you're looking at a computer simulated picture of the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus. You're also looking at a picture of a large number of workmen working on a luxury apartment complex in Palo Alto, California, in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world today, while a shelter in place order is in place in Northern California and Santa Clara County. And remarkably, they're hard at work, making lots of noise, and this is right across the street from where I live. And so, for those of us who are trying to stay at home and shelter in place, this makes it difficult to work at home or do other kinds of things. So, remarkably enough, the shelter in place orders apparently do not apply to the construction of luxury apartments in some of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world, nor are either the county administrators or the many wealthy people who live in these neighborhoods particularly concerned about getting exposed to the horrific coronavirus from these projects and from all the people congregating there and meeting and doing all of the things. Now, I'm not attacking people for doing their job or making money. Everybody has to do that. What I'm questioning, however, is how is it that the shelter in place orders in Northern California and probably in many other parts of the country do not apply to luxury apartment construction projects? So this is the order of the health officer of the county of Santa Clara. And the order of the health officer of the county of Santa Clara directing all individuals living in the county to shelter at their place or residence except that they may leave to provide or receive certain essential services or engage in certain essential activities. So that includes, for example, if you're a police officer, you can still go to work and be a police officer. It includes, of course, medical services and other things that should not be particularly controversial. But somehow, in Northern California, essential services, essential infrastructure happens to include housing construction. So here's the appropriate section of the fine print of the order by the Santa Clara health officer. So it says, for the purposes of this order, individuals may leave their residence to provide any services or perform any work necessary to the operations and maintenance of, quote, essential infrastructure, end quote, including, but not limited to, public works construction, construction of housing, and then in parentheses, in particular, affordable housing or housing for individuals experiencing homelessness, end parentheses. So you might read that as saying, okay, we're going to continue to make housing for people who are homeless, for very poor people. We don't want people out on the street wandering around with the coronavirus and spreading it. That makes a lot of sense, but in fact, it isn't clear that's what it means. And in fact, it is broadly interpreted to exempt most construction. So this is an article, and there are several articles like this in local magazines, newspapers, websites, etc. Engineering News Record, coronavirus, Northern California shelter-in-place orders exempt most construction, including the construction right across the street from my place. Construction of a luxury apartment complex in a residential neighborhood with families, with children, with all sorts of people who could easily pick up the coronavirus from the congregating workers and so forth. Not to mention people who might actually move into this newly built apartment building, which might contain the coronavirus sort of sitting on the shelves and floors and inside the walls and that sort of thing. If indeed there is a genuine pandemic, a genuine epidemic, and the coronavirus is unusually deadly compared to other viruses, flus, and so forth. You might wonder about that. This is a close-up of the workers this afternoon, busily doing something. I counted at least a dozen, I would say. Here's a few more shots of people up in the structure of the building and more on the ground doing something again. So a whole bunch of these people. Now, they were mostly wearing masks, but still, it's a lot of people. It's not exactly social distancing. As I mentioned, these are team efforts. These are group efforts. You can't build a structure like this without working together, without coming into contact with each other. If you happen to be carrying something like the coronavirus, not only can you give it to your coworkers who have to go home, they go to other work sites, they do all sorts of things like that. You also may very well, as I mentioned, actually leave it in the building, waiting to affect people who move into the building. And this is, again, a residential neighborhood with large numbers of people, families, children, etc. And it is definitely a luxury apartment building. This is not affordable housing. This is, in fact, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. Not so far away from here is a McLaren dealership just down the block road. This is our McLaren dealership. For those of you who don't know what McLaren is one of the most expensive cars in the world. If you're, say, very wealthy and you have a Ferrari and all your friends have a Ferrari and you want to impress them because everybody you know has a Ferrari, then you go buy a McLaren. And we have a McLaren dealership right down the road from not very far from this construction project. So in no way is this this in no way is this affordable housing or housing for the homeless. It is not by any reasonable definition essential services or anything like that, and yet they've been working on it the entire last week during the shelter-in-place order. And there seem to be other projects like this around Northern California, as indicated by the ENR article that I showed. So what gives here? Remarkably, the public health authorities, at least in this area, don't seem too concerned about this killer supervirus. And in fact, they're allowing projects to continue in wealthy neighborhoods full of rich people who probably wouldn't be too happy if they came down with the coronavirus. So go figure. How does that work out? So are we dealing with public health or ward politics? Do the public health authorities, the politicians in Northern California actually believe that the coronavirus is a danger, that it is an unusually deadly disease that threatens the health of the citizens of the wealthiest neighborhoods in their counties? Apparently not. They're apparently not too worried about that. Seems like we can just go ahead with these, luxury apartment complexes for the well-to-do, and we're not worried about anybody catching the disease. That does seem a bit odd, doesn't it? So here we have yet another example of this. It arrived in my mailbox today. And here we have, in big black letters, President Trump's coronavirus guidelines for America, complete with what looks like an official White House logo here and what looks like an official CDC, Centers for Disease Control, logo. Okay, maybe this is a good thing to send to people. What it looks to me like is hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising for President Trump's election campaign. So I leave you with that thought. I will also say that it is a rapidly developing situation, and this is not intended as a particularly, let's say, technical discussion of the issues involving the coronavirus and the pandemic, as many of my videos are. It's more opinion, and it is concerned with the issue of, well, do these public health authorities and political figures, county health officers, really take this seriously? It seems to me that if they did, only truly essential construction projects, not luxury apartment buildings in wealthy neighborhoods, would be continued. And in fact, if they're genuinely concerned about how dangerous this virus is, then they should be shutting all of these things down in residential neighborhoods where there are families, where there are many people, where there are children. That concludes this video, which was produced on March 23rd, 2020. If you like this video, please take a moment to click like. Please click subscribe and the notification bell if you would like to receive more content from us. We welcome constructive feedback and comments. Mathematical software is developing products and services to automate data analysis, reducing the risks of costly errors and improving results. If you want to support our work, you can subscribe on our Patreon page. This is the URL for our Patreon page. Scan the QR code in the lower right corner with your smartphone to get the Patreon link. Our Patreon link is also in the show notes below.